Hello and welcome to Business Morning. I am Bisi Adebayo. We'll begin today's show with the latest developments coming from the Nigerian Ports Authority, where the Managing Director, Hadiza Bala Usman, says operations have resumed in earnest, with lots of adjusters stepping up with assessment and subsequent replacement of burnt items during an attack on the NPA headquarters in Lagos in the aftermath of the NSAS protests. During an assessment to see the level of damage done, Mrs. Bala Usman confirmed that the Nigerian military is now helping with security of its facilities. Let's see the report.
It has been a devastating period, an aftermath of destruction in several property as a fallout of the NSAS protest. Nothing really from this line of sight suggests anything could be wrong with this headquarters building of the Nigeria Port Authority in Marina, Lagos. Whether as a carefully planned attack or a mere random action, the arsonist left more damages behind the glass claddings of this house. From the in-house eating area to several offices, an entire wing was torched. Not done, they went across the road and burnt every vehicle in sight at the park. It's a heartbreaking moment for the chief superintendent, who gets to see firsthand the extent of damage done.
Hoodlums attacked the premise. They were able to disarm the security personnel we had here, and they gained access to the premise. Where they touched vehicles, they were able to burn 27 vehicles within the premise. They touched a whole wing of the building. But were able to get the necessary support from Nigerian Armed Forces. They deployed here. They dispersed the hoodlums, and our firemen came into the premise and put out the fire.
It is, however, cheering news that critical files, documentation, payment systems, and account processes are intact, while operation has since commenced in earnest.
There has been a lot of work in terms of cleaning and determining the level of destructions that were done. We've invited our insurers. They've come in. All our assets are duly insured as required. So we're going through the process of reclaiming our insurance. But what is paramount is our services are not interrupted. Our networks and our systems have been functional. Within 2 days of the incidents, we're able to resume all port operations continued within 24 hours of the attack.
All assets damaged are insured, and therefore, sooner rather than later, full recovery should be achieved.
Now, the survival rate for small and medium enterprises in Nigeria has taken a massive hit this year amid a general slump in economic activity, a sharp drop in global oil prices on the back of the coronavirus pandemic slammed the country's oil-dependent economy. Now, the pandemic, which took a full course in the first 2 quarters of the year, has largely contributed to suffocating businesses, small and large. But while bigger players have the financial muscle to navigate through the tides, the mortality rate for SMEs has only increased. But as businesses tried to recoup from the pandemic, or the oil price crash and the government subsidy removal, and then came the NSAS protest, which resulted to destruction of lives and property. But joining me now to speak to this is the Executive Secretary of the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, Mr. Eke Obiji, who's right here with us in the studio. Good morning, and thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Vincent.
Now, before we get down to the issue of the NSAS aftermath, I'd like to ask you, how has it been for your members after the COVID-19 lockdown was lifted?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I would say after the lockdown was lifted, they started gradually to pick up the pieces of their lives and businesses. They were just trying to do that before this one came up. But one good thing that happened with the COVID-19, immediately the thing was relaxing. The federal government came up with some sort of support, what you call COVID loan, which is made up of about 50 billion, which, to be more specific, quite a slight number of our members they were able to access that fund. Though not the way expected, because the highest ceiling for that was to be 25 million. But I don't think, from my own record, any of our members got to that level. And when we took it up with NISAL, they said it's because if they are to go it that way, the number of people that will access the fund will be so minimal. So that's why they reduced hand so that they could spread it. Yeah. So quite a sizable number of them got it. Not so much the way we expect, but that's good. It's better than nothing. So that's that. And they are trying to start their life again. You know, when you are doing a business and something happened by sudden, it's not easy for you to pick up immediately. It takes a while. So that has been the situation. Now, before you entered into SARS, which is more recent. Yeah.
So let's talk about the NSAS now, the aftermath of the NSAS now. How would you quantify the losses so far?
To be very candid with you, the losses were quite enormous. How do you quantify them? In what way? Is it only in financial terms, man-hours, products lost, or what? It really costs, even though the young men that were doing that were fighting a good cause, though along the line, hoodlums joined. The real NSAS protesters were peaceful. Must give it to them. I know severally in front of my office, you see them march peacefully. They don't touch anybody. But when the bad guys, in quote, joined them, then the whole thing got disrupted.
But sorry to interrupt you. Before it even got disrupted, while the protests were going on peacefully, there were issues of traffic gridlock, and that almost ground a lot of businesses to a halt. How about the implications of that?
Yeah, with regards to hold-ups, anybody who is, I'm talking of Lagos where all of us are. All of us face traffic gridlock in Lagos. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, when these chaps are on the road, no matter where you're going to, you have to slow down. It affects business. Maybe you have business appointment, to catch up with in a particular bank, in a particular office, and all whatnot, and you are delayed. What are you going to do? It's a loss. It's a loss to the business owner, both on your own side and the other side too. Because two must agree to meet to do a transaction. So if there's a problem along the line, the two will be affected. So in terms of the impact may be different from one party to the other. So that's that.
Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah. Then even in terms of production, supplies and all whatnot, how do you meet up? You know, one thing with business, if you are given a deadline to produce and supply, you follow it strictly. But with this type of development, you may not meet up. You may even lose that opportunity because the man who is demanding your supply maybe want to meet up with another demand somewhere. So if it's disrupted, you will not like it. It's just like people's supplying newspapers. If newspapers in a particular day are not supplied and you do anything, you fail to deliver it to the right place, it's gone. If it comes a day after, then that's a loss for the owner of the business.
So with all that has happened now, talking about the fallout from the lockdown caused by COVID-19 pandemic and now the fallout of the NSAS protests, what lessons do you think we can draw from these recent events? Talking about the impact on MSMEs.
So many lessons, so many. For example, those businesses that were burnt, and this really affects our people in our sector. Sometimes when you tell some of them about insuring their business and all that, they will be treating it with levity. Not that a lot of, people don't do that. Some do it, but many don't take it serious.
And why don't they take it seriously?
You see, there's this impression in the country here that if you put money into insurance business, at the time you have any issue, they will not pay attention. So there are many players in the industry. You look out for the good ones that are very prompt and efficient. There are some of them in that regard. But branding everybody, and then at the end of the day, you run into problems. I want to give you an example. One, I'm not going to mention names or what. Somebody I know very well who runs a food beverage business. He has been in that business for years. It's a she, sorry. She has been in that business for years. But one funny thing happened around that business. It was not insured. And one day there was fire outbreak in the factory. Everything burned down. That was when he downed on the madam that, look, I've entered into break. People ask, what, we go to your insurance? Say, no, he doesn't have insurance. In that case, who is to blame? Is it the insurance company or your member or what? And when the matter came up, say, you don't have insurance? Say, no. Say, no. You've made blunders. So that's a very big, important lesson we have to learn. Like now, look at what happened with the NSAS. We call it riot. You check. Even not only for our members, even the insurance businesses. If before they've not been factoring developments like this, they have to think deeply. They have to be very creative because we are staying in a developing society. Things like this are very common. Even in the developed world, like US and all whatnot. You look at what happened with Lloyd Floyd's death in the US. And there have been many more. Before you know it, I mean, you watch it on CNN. People going to big supermarkets and cutting away goods and stuff. I mean, so no place is exempted from it. So both the person who does a manufacturing business or what, and the insurance people have to put that into consideration. Create a product in that regard and market it. Because of what has happened, people will take it seriously. If you come to market it, they say, what happened now will be a reference point. Say, what if it had happened to me? What would I have done? So it will sell. But sometimes we wait for things like this to happen. If there is peace, if you go to market, it will be a hard sell for you. People will say, no, when will it happen? Oh, are you sure? This and that. You know, here we believe in Holy Ghost fire. So...
Of course, we have a member, a stakeholder in the insurance sector coming on the program much later today to talk about the role of insurance companies, just like we've mentioned. But for those businesses now who are not insured, who have lost money, who have lost their valuables, you know, how do they begin to rebuild? Are we going to leave them because, oh, you didn't insure your business and so that's your headache, deal with it? How do they begin to rebuild their businesses?
That's a very good question because... yeah, it has happened. Are we going to kill ourselves? But life must go on. So that's a very valid question. Now, I read up something recently in one of the business membership organizations. A very resourceful group. They call it the beer group. That's beer manufacturers. They have a group in that BMO. They set up a fund to assist businesses. Do you get what I'm saying? This one is internal support. So, okay, we are the beer group. We can provide this amount of money to support our less privileged and much affected members. That's one aspect. You saw what happened recently with Access Bank. Access Bank set up about 50 billion. But from the feelers I'm getting from our members, they're saying what they ask for is so much. I don't know. We need to test it properly. But I'm sure you're aware of that. You are in the business sector also. Access Bank did something banks have not been doing before. Set out 50 billion to assist businesses. And if it would work the way they said it, that would be very, very good. Then look at what happened with the COVID loan. Nobody ever thought that such a thing could come up from the Nigerian government. But the government was quite thoughtful. And though it didn't reach everybody, the government was thoughtful about that and brought out that money. And made it in such a way that even the low of the lowest can access it. And most of the requirements that funders ask for, they try to set that aside. That is very, very good, and it's commendable. Also now, I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard of the MSME Survivor Fund.
I was just going to come to that.
Yeah, the MSME Survivor Fund, which the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment are really championing. It's also a welcome development. No, I'm sure when it started, because we are part of it, nobody had answers in mind. Yeah, COVID had come and gone. Nobody had answers in mind. And the colossal damage is going to cause. A lot of small businesses have closed shop. Like if you move around the city, there are a lot of places you go to, the businesses burnt down to ashes that even they can't pick a pin from there. Tell me how those people are going to start again. Then another thing I will propose to the government is, I don't know, I've not thought of the name to give it. They can call it any type of stimulus fund to support people, because we are in a very critical time. That's the truth of the matter. If these businesses are allowed to die, finally, it's not going to augur well for the economy. But there must be a way by which we try to assist them. Then other players in the Nigerian economy, I've said what the BR Group in Man did, Access Bank is doing. Access Bank is not the only bank in Nigeria.
So are you saying that the other banks are not, contributing in terms of making funds available for MSMEs? Access Bank cannot be the only bank that is doing something like that.
No, definitely. But what I'm saying, what Access Bank have done, come out to do straight, we've not heard it from another bank. Have you heard any?
Well, that's why you're here to tell us.
So I've not heard of any. At least, the minute I mentioned Access Bank, you got it. You understand? You say yes.
All right.
So we expect such to come from other banks and other players, not just banks. There are other people that have funds in Nigeria.
Let's talk about the role of government once again. Last week, President Buhari approved a free business name registration with the CAC for 250,000 businesses across the nation. Should that actually be a major focus of the government, or making more efforts at providing a more enabling climate for businesses to thrive?
Yeah, providing a good business environment is very important. It's very key, because even if you register 300 billion businesses and if the environment is not conducive, they cannot work. But at the same time, this policy is basically pro-poor and the unemployed. We have so many unemployed, able-bodied young men and women. So what the government, even some they don't even have the money to even register a business. Enterprise registration is the lowest category of registration. I'm not talking about limited liability and so on and so forth. So that's what they said. Okay, they will pick out 250,000, which is it's a tip of the iceberg. It's like dropping small water inside an ocean. But I think what they want to say is that, okay, let's just try this and see. This may not be end of the road. So let's see, 250,000, 250,000 around the country. They'll see how it goes. And I'm sure if it's a success, me and you don't know, they may come up to do additional things to make sure that a lot of young people or people that they can't get to work, they don't even have the funds to set up their own business, are now registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission to start something.
All right. We'd like to thank you, Executive Secretary of National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, Mr. Ike Obiji. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
When we return in just a moment, we'll talk about the role of insurance in the aftermath of the EndSARS protest. Do stay with us. Welcome back. The dust from the EndSARS protest and its aftermath may have settled, but individuals, governments and private organizations have continued to count their losses. Many say it's a time of reckoning for insurance companies in Nigeria as this crisis looks to gauge the preparedness and financial capacities of the insurers to manage their clients across the country. Well, I have with me the Director General of the Nigerian Insurance Association, Mrs. Yetunde Ilori, to talk more about this. Good morning, Mrs. Ilori. Thank you for joining us on the program. Now, let me start by asking you, how would you describe How would you describe the level of damage and losses that have been incurred as a result of the unrest?
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you. Describing the level of loss that we have, I'll say it's colossal, it's catastrophic, especially because the insurance industry has not had time to do much business this year on the account of COVID-19 pandemic. So it's colossal, it's enormous, thinking of all that has happened.
Now, of course, considering at the same time that insurance operators are in the middle of a recapitalization, how overwhelming is it for the insurance sector at the moment, and how prepared are the insurance companies to deal with the current situation?
I would say insurance is about handling such unforeseen circumstances. The only unfortunate thing here is insurance, I believe we are well set up to handle the situation. The challenge is one occasion bringing in so many claims and to us at this particular time. But in terms of preparation, we're prepared, because when you talk about insurance, you look at pulling together risks. And on the back of insurance, you have a second layer that you call reinsurance. And so for all insurance companies that must have assumed responsibility, taking on, putting in place covers for their clients at this particular time, I believe simultaneously they will have put in place reinsurance arrangement to cover their back as well. So insurance industry is prepared. It's only that at this particular time, you are having too many claims that will be hitting us at the same time.
And so, of course, many have wondered if there's need to worry about how long it would take for the insurance companies to take care of the claims by their customers. Is there anything to worry about in terms of how long the customers have to wait?
Well, I wouldn't say there's any need for fear. There's no need for anyone to be afraid of how claims will be settled, because that I must first of all say this, that claim settlement will only be to people that have insured. It's only people that have earlier on bought insurance covers that will be settled. So yes, the enormity of the losses that we have around this time, but not all are actually insured. For anyone that has, in terms of the cover that they have bought with the necessary extension, I can assure you that claims will be promptly settled. It might take a while, and this is what I mean. Claims process entails documentation. So on the part of the people that are up to them to say how quickly can they put together the documents that the insurance industry will be, insurance companies will be asking for. And as soon as documentation is completed, and necessary, that insurance industry is positioned to settle their claims.
All right, now let's talk about the level of penetration of insurance. Now, of course, before now, many saw insurance as a luxury. And of course, the executive secretary of NASME, who was here, also talked about the need to insure. Before now, many would say, some would say it's too expensive, you know, but now we've seen the need to insure. Many have now seen the need to insure. So how are insurance companies ready to take this advantage at this time?
I'll say insurance at this particular time is a defining moment for insurance. Fortunately for the industry, recapitalization, and it's obvious to everybody, the kind of losses that we have is such that we have regular insurances that cover with the necessary exclusions, extensions that can be taken up by the insuring public. So I would say it's an opportunity for the insurance industry. Yes, the negative impact of how suddenly we are hit with all these losses, but at the same time is something we've always wanted the public to appreciate, that you don't need to buy an umbrella when it starts raining, but you can well ahead of the time envisage and assume the kind of losses with your enterprise risk management. What kind of losses are you likely risks that you're exposed to that has to be managed? So the insurance industry is prepared. Even after recapitalization, we'll be looking at things, products, the coming up with products that will adequately meet the priority needs of the insuring public. So the insurance industry is well positioned to accommodate this.
And with the amount of claims expected now, what will be the implications for insurance companies' balance sheets and their Q4 earnings?
Oh, especially for the fourth quarter, now that we are having this. And I expect it to spread beyond just the fourth quarter and extend to next year. Because I know in terms of people coming up with notification of what they have suffered, and also the documentation, this is something that might extend till sometimes next year. Yeah, but it's going to hit us, but not as negatively as some people will have assumed, because it's going to be a double-way thing. As much as we're settling claim, at the same time, we expect to see a great influx of people coming in to take up insurance, because much more than ever before, we'll now see a public that appreciates the position of insurance and the need to be insured. And we're already having that. We are having people, ordinarily, we considered insurance as being expensive. We now see that, actually finding yourself in
All right, Mrs. Laurie, if you can still hear me now, let's talk about the recapitalization exercise now. December the 31st is the deadline. How set are the operators with all that has happened?
Well, December 31st is not the deadline. What the regulator has done after the COVID-19 incident is to come up with a segmentation arrangement where the insurance companies are expected to meet 50% of the capital requirement, while the reinsurance companies are expected to meet 60% of same. But just as they have been magnanimous enough, because we have a regulator that is responsive and very sensitive to what is happening in the industry and also the country. So segmentation of meeting the capital requirements, and an assessment was expected to take place in December. By 31st of December, everybody's supposed to have met the expected midway result. But now, with all this happening, I'm of the opinion that every attention should be focused on meeting and even exceeding the expectation of the public. The entire attention should be what should be focused on assisting the people that have been involved in losses, to concentrate on how are we going to meet all these claims? How are we going to settle within reasonable time so that people can go back to business and appreciate that insurance can really be there when the unfortunate happens?
Now, in terms of insurance penetration in Nigeria now, how will the recapitalization help with that?
With the recapitalization, the regulator definitely has some objectives in mind. And with the present situation, especially with the COVID-19 experience, we'll know that penetration is something to focus on. And lack of penetration in the first instance came from both the demand side and also the supply side. Also, when we look at the demand side, one of the things is complaints about access to insurance. So I know most of the member companies are focusing on developing and deploying technology. Many members are focusing on research to ensure that we come up with products that align with the needs of the people with what we're supplying. So I expect with the recapitalization exercise, we're good to go, and it's going to ensure and help with the penetration that we have not seen.
Now, I know we touched a little on the issue of low penetration of insurance in the country, but what, in your opinion, is the reason why we have a low penetration of insurance in the country before all of this unrest happened?
Well, like I said before, it has both the demand side of it and the supply side of it. To talk about the demand side,
All right, we'll just have to wrap up the conversation with the Director General of the Nigerian Insurance Association, Mrs. Yetunde Ilori. She's been talking about the importance of insurance at this time. Well, let's get a review of the equities market now with Eddie Diong-Iwang, who's ready to take us through last week's numbers. Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning, VC. Well, the market notched higher, breaking the 30,000 psychological level last week, rising by 6.39% week on week to 30,530.69 points. Now, the year-to-date returns currently stand about 13.74%. Now, what happened last week? Investors, it was due to increased appetite for risk assets due to the abysmal yield in the fixed income space. The equity cap was at 15.958 trillion naira. Our volume, value, and deals increased compared to the previous week as volume was up by about 26% at 1.90 billion units, worth 23.61 billion naira, and all of that was traded in 23,578 deals. FBN Holdings, Access Bank, and Zenith Bank were the most traded by volume, while these same banks were the most traded by value. The sector just was broadly positive. Now we can see the 12.21% gain on consumer goods, and that was largely driven by the 21% gain on Nestle. The banking index was up 0.58%, also largely driven by gains from GT Bank, Stanbic Bank, and Zenith Bank. Industrial goods was up 7.60%. And that was due to gains from Boa Cement and Dangote Cement. Now, speaking of the insurance sector, just like you mentioned, about 2 insurance companies have released their earnings, ICO Insurance and AXA Mansard, and they were really impressive. So hopefully today we'll see investors react positively to that, while oil and gas was up 6.22%. But let's talk to Charles Fakuga, the chief dealer at Titico Trust and Investment. Good morning, Mr. Fakuga. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, the bullish run switched into a higher gear last week. Now, are we likely to see that run continue in the market, or should we be expecting some profit taking soon?
Yes, we will expect the trends to continue, at least for today, tomorrow, and maybe towards end of the week, we might see some bit of profit taking. More also note that we are pushing the festive period. We are going to be seeing more and more of sell pressure. However, because of this excellent performance of some of these companies, we're going to be seeing buy pressure on some of these companies that have done so well. So we're going to be seeing a mixed trade. The trend will continue. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, towards the end of the week, we might see a little bit of profit taking.
Okay, let's talk about some earnings now. We've seen some results from insurance companies, and they were quite impressive to a large extent. So what stood out for you the most in these earnings, and how do you think what has happened in the country lately will affect the fourth quarter earnings?
Yes, I must congratulate some of the management of these companies. So those results came to us as a bit of surprise, but with their resilience and with the determination of the management, the workers, the board, and of course, the stock exchange providing that environment for them. Despite the harsh economic environment, these companies are able to post good results. So we're going to see that the fourth quarter is going to be better as things improve in terms of security. And of course, if the numbers of the economy is a slight improvement, of course, they're going to be seeing much and more improvement. I would just advise investors to just invest in stocks with strong fundamentals and get close to their stockbrokers so that they will be able to understand their own risk profile and know when to invest and when to take profit.
Okay, so Stanbic IBTC is the only lender that has released its earnings. Do you have any idea why there's still that delay from other lenders, and what should we be expecting?
Yes, for other lenders, you will also note that if their main primary regulator has not approved their results, then they will not just want to release it like that. For Stanbic, yes, they have shown a lot of resilience, and we just hope that the other lenders that will be releasing their results very soon, they will be performing at least better than what we are expecting. But I believe I'm positive, seeing what other ones have done, I'm positive that the other ones that will be coming will be better performed, and then investors will be smiling. Investors will smile.
So what are the opening calls in the market like today?
Yes, the market has opened, and we are seeing a mixed rate. It's still very early, but I will tell you, at the end of close of business today, we are going to see another bullish run.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, hoping for that bullish run in the market. But just before I let you go, Mr. Fakuga, apart from the earnings that are coming into the market now, and I mean the lower yields in the fixed income space, is there anything that you think might also drive investor sentiments this week?
Yes, what will drive investment sentiment, apart from what you have just mentioned, is the resilience of this company. And their investors are ready to support them. And of course, the regulators, exchange and Fed, are providing the enable environment for this company to thrive. The only issue there is the general macroeconomy. And once the government begin to insist this and make good pronouncements, and we begin to see things improving little by little, of course, that will go a long way in enhancing the performance of these companies and the result that we're going to be seeing. So I must give kudos to the management and board of this listed company.
All right, Mr. Fakuga, thank you for your input on the program. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Charles Fakuga is a chief dealer at Titico Trust and Investment Companies. Well, BC, it would seem like those positive sentiments left also the stock exchange and into the unlisted securities market, as that market closed positive by 0.60% week on week, with the NSI at 730.22 points. Now, the market cap also came in higher at 536.39 billion naira. We saw an increase in activity, although it wasn't as much, but then we saw 216,058 units worth 6.01 million naira, all traded in 13 deals last week. Well, we guess investors will continue to ride on this bullish sentiments, BC.
We'll see how it goes before the end of the day. Of course, we'll be getting back to Eddie to take us through the debt and currencies market when we return shortly, but that will be after we take a trip to London. Just stay with us. Studio where Juliana Olayinka is waiting to take us through this morning's headlines. Good morning, Juliana. Well, let's begin our conversation with the fallout of the 4-week lockdown for England, which begins on Thursday. Already, the policymakers at the BOE are expected to inject up to £100 million into the economy when they meet this week, amid mounting fears that the lockdown will lead to a double-dip recession. What sound bites are you hearing about all of these?
Well, good morning, Bismi. Goodness, there are so many sound bites. I don't know where to begin. It started on the weekend. On Saturday afternoon, Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave a televised address to the nation confirming the inevitable, that England will indeed be going into a 4-week lockdown. As you said, this will start on Thursday. For tens of thousands of businesses. This is really the final death blow to their survival. It's been particularly tough over the past couple of months here in England. In Britain, we still have the highest death toll in Europe. And I think it's now a realization that over the next 3 to 4 months, it's going to be even more tougher. We know there will be an international travel ban, so those thinking of coming into Britain from Thursday, reschedule your plans. That won't happen. People also won't be able to travel out of the UK, and there are so many questions and criticisms that are arriving from this announcement that was made on Saturday. Today, later this afternoon, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be addressing MPs in the House of Commons, because this isn't yet set in stone, although it really is, because we know it's got the backing from Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition Labour Party. But a couple of weeks ago, because of the amount of toing and froing, MPs did say that any kind of massive restriction will have to face a vote from MPs, and that's what's going to happen before Thursday. We're expecting a Tory revolt of at least 80 Conservative members of Parliament, because they believe that the cure is worse than the disease itself. £1.8 billion a day, that's a huge figure. We know Britain's economy had already been suffering. We saw great Eurozone GDP figures last month. That's the same for Britain. We went in a lot later again. We're going in a lot later. Lessons that should have been learnt clearly haven't been learnt. And the hospitality sector, goodness, who knows where to begin with them, who were already suffering. And on Thursday, they'll be closing their doors once again.
And meanwhile, Juliana, retailers and hospitality firms have warned of the devastating financial impacts of this new lockdown we're talking about, which they say threatens billions of pounds worth of Christmas trade and puts hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. Looks like this year's Christmas won't be exciting for traders and even customers.
Well, absolutely. Christmas is certainly over. Well, over if you like to spend your Christmas with extended family members, which, of course, everybody does like to do. But yes, again, it's been called the final death blow for tens of thousands of businesses and the British High Street. The fourth quarter is called the Golden Quarter, and it's called the Golden Quarter because typically in any given year, this is when retailers are really able to maximize their profits. Profits has already been dented during the summer, and they'd hoped at least they'd be able to claw back some of those profit margins, but alas, that clearly isn't the case. Let's not forget that retailers have spent hundreds of millions of pounds making sure that their stores are COVID secure and are safe and are following the government guidelines. It appears as if that money has been completely thrown down the bin. There is a statement here from Helen Dickinson. She's the chief executive of the British Retail Consortium. She said retail faces a nightmare before Christmas as the government proposes to close thousands of retail premises under this new national lockdown. It will cause untold damage to the high street in the run-up to Christmas, cost countless jobs, and permanently set back the recovery of the wider economy with only a minimal effect on the transmission of the virus. Of course, statements and comments are coming in thick and fast because this was only told to us on Saturday. There's a US election tomorrow, and we've got until Thursday, so I'm sure there'll be more statements as the days go on.
Well, then, the Welsh and Scottish governments have also expressed their displeasure about what they call an unfair extension of the furlough scheme during England's second lockdown. And that's weeks after devolved nations called for the measure to support their own tightened restrictions. What are their agitations?
Well, their agitations are pretty clear. You just highlighted them. They're not happy that during their own lockdown restrictions, because bearing in mind, England, we're at the bitter end of this. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, they're much further ahead. Wales have been in this 2-week circuit breaker lockdown. Scotland have extended their tier level restrictions, and they were refused this 80% of the furlough extension by the government, by Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Then, of course, England goes into lockdown, and this furlough scheme, this wage subsidy, has now been extended. So the comments speak for themselves, really. We already knew that there were divisions between the nations, and this has further been highlighted by the fact that they've made potentially a blunder by extending the furlough scheme only when England are in trouble, but when the other nations are in trouble, that hasn't been the case. There is so much political tension here in the United Kingdom at the moment, Bissy. I can't stress it enough. And of course, we've got Brexit coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. So we'll try and keep you updated here in the studio.
All right, Juliana, thank you for this update. We'll see you again at 1:30.
Thank you.
Well, let's get back to Edidion to review the debt and currencies market. Over to you.
Thank you, BC. The bond market was also bullish last week as investors, due to excess liquidity, as investors reinvested FGN bond coupon payment, and there were also OMO maturities. Now, what we saw in the market was few sellers, willing to take profit. So yields contracted by about 16 basis points. Now, on Friday, there was a lot of activity in the bond market. We saw 94 deals worth 122.49 billion naira. The Treasury bills market was also a bit quiet last week as investors just paid attention to the primary market auction on Wednesday. And since Thursday was a public holiday, on Friday, investors had the opportunity to react to that. So we had 48 deals worth 79.28 million naira. While the OMO market was also bullish as we saw 30 deals on Friday worth 28 billion naira. But let's talk to Dayo Ogundari in Treasury Sales at Access Bank. Good morning, Dayo. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Hi, good morning.
So with yields at abysmal levels in the Treasury bills market, what should we be expecting this week?
Okay, so I think this week there'll be mixed sentiments in the market. There'll be a lot of bid offers, but not a lot of sell offers. It'll also be driven largely by liquidity in the system. We'll expect yields to trend mildly downwards, given the elevated liquidity. And I think just looking ahead to the rest of the month, it would also be driven again by just the bond calendar and the MPC meeting that will also be this month. So these are some of the things that will dictate where the market goes.
All right, Dayo, thank you for your input on the program. Dayo Ogundari is in Treasury Sales Department of Access Bank. Well, that's it on the market review. We'll hope that these bullish sentiments continue today, BC.
Absolutely, Edidion. As usual, we always hope for a profitable trading day and the week, since today is Monday. And that's where we end today's program. Thank you for watching. I'm BC Adebayo.